Vanuatu.
President, His Excellency President of the Human Rights Council, His Excellency Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The Republic of Vanuatu is very pleased to be addressing this meeting today. I have come here to join the leaders of the world to discuss and raise concern on different human rights challenges affecting millions of innocent citizens across the entire globe, from the island country and in country across country. Mr. President, the focus of my statement here today will be on two important but very highly critical issues to the entire population of my country. First, I want to focus on the right of our indigenous people to practice their cultural and spiritual ritual in the two of our islands in the Tafea province, south of Vanuatu. And secondly, I will bring to the forefront of our debate some of the issues regarding human rights abuse in West Papua that have been very disturbing to the community of democracy around the world. Mr. President, my country's struggle to achieve political independence in 1980 was marked with incidents of social protest and emergence of some political movement within our country. We were Melanesian being governed by British and France in our own motherland. Prior to 1980s, we were stateless in our country, and we were neither French or British citizens. And for almost 4 decades, we were exposed to foreign rule. So we have to struggle to construct our identity as free people to live in dignity. Independence was our objective. And this was a compelling drive that motivated our leaders to achieve nothing less than political independence. We did not fight for independence because we were economically and financially ready. We did not fight for independence because our colonial masters were killing our people. No. We fought for our political independence because it is our God-given right to be free. Freedom was our inalienable right. It is a human right. And Vanuatu was proclaimed independence on the 30th July 1980. 33 years after independence, I am delighted to say that France has begun to demonstrate its willingness for our indigenous people to visit the two of our very sacred islands, Vanuatu, Matthew, and Leka, Anta, in the southern part of our country, to fulfill their cultural and spiritual obligation. Ritual and ceremonies continue to be held in other islands on the Tafea provinces annually, despite the blockage of previously imposed by the French authority for our tribesmen to travel to the sacred island Vanuatu and Leka to fulfill their cultural and spiritual duties. Mr. President, I want now to focus my attention on the chronic human rights challenges that have affected the indigenous Melanesian people of West Papua since 1969. And I do this with great respect and humility. My country is here in this meeting to amplify the concern for human rights in West Papua. We are very concerned indeed about the manner in which the international community has neglected the voice of the people of West Papua, whose human rights has been trampled upon and severely suppressed since 1969. Mr. President, you are presiding over the noblest organ of the United Nations, the Human Rights Council. But what do we do when the right of the Melanesian people of Papua and West Papua is challenged with military intervention and presence? Since the Conventional Act of Free Choice in 1969, the Melanesian people of West Papua has been subject to an ongoing human rights violation committed by the Indonesian security services. The world has witnessed the litany of torture, murder, exploitation, rape, military raid, arbitrary arrest, and dividing of civil society through intelligence operation. The Indonesian National Commission on Human Rights, Komnas HAM, concluded that this act constitutes crime against humanity, and they are the Indonesian law number 26 of 2000, Komnas HAM 2001 and 2004. In this climate of fear and repression of political dissent and blatant negligence by the international community, including the UN and the powerful developed country since 1969, we find this forgotten race still dare to dream for equality and justice. Yet, the democratic nation has kept silent. Mr. President, as a Malaysian citizen, I have come here to call for immediate action. Injustice in West Papua is a threat to the principle of justice everywhere in the world. I do not sleep well at night when I know that in 2010, Yawan Wayani, known as a separatist, was videotaped by the security force as he was lying in a pool of his own blood with his intestines seeping out from gaping wound in his abdomen. It concerned me that in October 2010, Telenga Gire and Hangen Pugan Kiwo were tied by the military and were severely tortured. It concerns me when I see the video footage of a group of Papuan men bounded and being kicked in the head by a uniformed soldier who are meant to protect them. I'm worried because between October 2011 and March 2013, 25 Papuans were murdered and nothing has been done to bring the perpetrator to justice. And it embarrassed me as a Melanesian to note that roughly 10% of the indigenous Melanesian population has been killed by the Indonesian security force since 1963. Well, I acknowledge the 15 years of reformation that has taken place. I'm also worried that Melanesians will soon become a minority in their own motherland of Papua. Mr. President, in a world so now closely connected with innovative technology, there should be no excuse about lack of information on human rights violation that has plagued the Papuan people for more than 45 years. Search the internet and research papers by academic institutions and international NGOs, and you will find raw facts portraying the brutal abuse of the rights of the Melanesian people in Papua. But why are we not discussing it in this Council? Why are we turning a blind eye to them? A closing eye here to the lone voice of the Papuan people, many of whom have shed innocent blood because they want justice and freedom. Many are the martyrs that has been persecuted and brutally murdered because they carried the unspoken voice of the million now living in fear in the valley of lofty mountain of Papua. They are demanding recognition and equality and the respect for their human rights and to live in peace. Well, this August Council here will hear their cry and now goes forward to protect their human rights and put right all wrong of the past. I have listened attentively to the voice of former civil servant, Mr. Philip Karma, and student Yusak Package, who were sentenced to 15 and 10 years in prison, and speaking from behind bars, calling on our country in the Pacific to speak out against the injustice against them. These are the children of the warrior who has stood firm to fight during the Second World War in the Pacific, who have helped bring peace and security in our part of the world. It is not our duty to bring peace to their tribal village and community, but affording them basic human rights that most of us here take for granted. I am very encouraged that the matter has now reached the European Union Committee on Human Rights, and we look forward for some action to improve the human rights condition of our brothers and sisters in Papua. I further call the government of developed countries, including the African nation and the island country of the Caribbean and the Pacific, to condemn the issue of human rights violation. I want to echo the word of Martin Luther King Jr., who said in his speech in 1963 that nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. We, the democratic nation, must not ignore the cry of the Papuan people. Mr. President, the concern we are raising here is more than a question keeping 70% of the wealth from oil and gas in West Papua. It is the question of political status. The concern we are raising here is more than the question of economic status, where 80% of wealth from forestry, fisheries, and general mining are kept in Papua. It is a question of the respect of the human rights and the existence of the Melanesian people. Our concern is not to see how much they have been fed by the golden spoon, but to see the merger of respect for freedom accorded to the Papua as equal citizen. And to what degree the civil society are given the right to express concern about the quality of governance in their motherland. For this should be a measure of vibrant democracy. Mr. President, access must be allowed for human rights monitor, international journalists, and international human rights NGO to visit West Papua. It is clear from any historical record that the Melanesian people of West Papua were the scapegoat of Cold War politics and were sacrificed to gratify the appetite of the natural resource which this country possesses. Mr. President, if the UN representative, Mr. Ortiz Sands, has described the West Papuan issue as a cancer growing on the side of the UN, and that his job was to remove it. It is very clear today, from what we have seen, that this cancer was never removed, but simply concealed. One day this cancer will be diagnosed. We must not be afraid if the UN has made some mistake in the past. We must admit our mistake and correct them. Mr. President, as I close, my government believes that human rights challenge of Papua must be brought back to the agenda of the United Nations. I call on the Human Rights Council to consider adopting a resolution to establish a country mandate on the situation on human rights in West Papua. The mandate should include investigation on the alleged human rights violation in West Papua and to provide recommendations on a peaceful political solution in West Papua. This will help to assist in supporting His Excellency President Yudhoyono's place to hold dialogue with Papua. I thank you once again for the opportunity to express my view in this forum. Lord God, you may stand up. In God we trust. Thank you very much.